Good morning, YouTube. Welcome back to another video. This is Trevor Steele with Backcountry at PPG here in Italy at the moment, just south of Ancona, Italy. I know for a fact I said that wrong. But anyways, I am out here at the Vittorazi EFI launch party thing. I'm not 100% sure what the correct terminology is for this event, but I'm out here giving the old EFI machine a try. And I spent about 7 minutes on it yesterday. Today I've had the privilege of spending more time on it, and I wanted to share some of my first impressions of it in the air. Now, I can only say so much, and I'm going to try and tread lightly on what I say, but I will tell you right off the bat that the fuel burn is pretty impressive. Let's start with that. This feels to me like cruising RPMs. We're at 4.2 liters an hour. 3.7, pretty much maintaining altitude here. So I'd say the one nice thing about this motor, beyond everything else that it does well, is this little dashboard. You know, let's talk about the EFI real quick. This is the electronic fuel injection engine of the Moster 185. So they took a Moster 185 and added EFI to it. Now, the pros to an EFI engine, and the reason why people are excited about it, and I could be botching this, but this is my impression, is additional fuel economy, smoother, no reason to adjust anything, and ever so slightly more power. So let's talk about all of those points, starting with the fuel economy. Now, I don't have enough time to go on a long cross-country flight to really check the fuel. However, this little fancy schmancy thing right here, which is the Vittorazi display unit, it tells me my fuel economy. So we're here at sea level. I'm on an 18-meter Viper XC, about 125 kg all the way up, currently flying a limitless freight, and I'm burning 3.5 liters an hour, which is kind of cool. It says I have 40 minutes of flight time and a bunch of other jumbo mumbo. That's pretty slick to have just sitting right there. So 3.5 liters, we'll get to the other things in a second. 3.5 liters an hour is pretty impressive. I would say a good carburetor engine with a correctly weighted pilot, you should be burning somewhere around 4.5 to 6.5. In Utah, we burn about 6.5 liters an hour at 5,000 feet. So we're getting a high fuel burn due to altitude, but a good tuned carb at sea level is burning somewhere around 4 and 5 liters. Right now I'm cruising at 3.9, 3.7 liters an hour. If I was on a slightly larger size wing, the 18 is slightly small for me. If I was on a slightly larger size wing, I'd probably be burning closer to 2.5 to 3. Right now I'm at 3.6. So that's pretty cool. You not only does this little display unit, which we'll talk about in a second, give me the information, I am very efficient on this motor. The next thing that I want to talk about, which we'll get to the display unit last, is the vibration. A very nice new Moster 185 Plus with a carb, not an EFI version, is pretty smooth. A Moster with a lot of wear and tear that hasn't been very well cared for can get a little bit vibraty and a little rougher, but a new one is fairly smooth. Now this EFI feels to me very similar. I can't say that it just blows me away in terms of the vibration. I'm maybe 20 minutes into flying it at this point, so take that for what it is. But it's not like I hopped on this and I'm like, wow, this is so smooth. I just came off of like a 10-hour bender, as in I flew 10 hours or so in the last couple of weeks on a regular Moster, a brand new one. I broke it in and put the first 10 hours on it. And this doesn't feel to me any smoother. Now, where this will probably shine is this won't deteriorate in smoothness like a regular Moster might. You know, you get on a regular Moster and you put 150 hours on it, and it might, not guaranteed, it might get a little bit more rocky, you could say, in the power band, a little less smooth. This EFI would probably stay super smooth. Now, I can't speak on that because I don't have 150 hours on this unit. This is brand new. It probably has an hour of flight time on it at this point. It's a very new, brand new motor we got here. Still burning that 3.5 liters. I've got 15 minutes, so let's keep talking. The next thing that I wanted to talk about is the power band and how smooth the power band is. The Moster 185 is known to have a bit of a jumpy center power band between 5,500 RPMs and 6,500 RPMs. For whatever reason, that's a thing. Now, it's not a thing on every single one, and on some of them, it's noticeably worse than others. I haven't had too many issues with it. Back in the day, you know, I've been flying Mosters since 2012. I've had Mosters before that have a very jumpy power band where there's absolutely nothing. And normally, once you jump to 6,500, you can back down in RPMs all the way to about 58, 57 before it kind of dips down to 55. So you have this like jumpy range. Now on this, I don't have an RPM gauge. Excuse me, I do have an RPM gauge. On this one, it's very smooth throughout the whole thing. I'm just gonna slowly back my way down. We're at 56, 55, 54, 53, 52, 51, and 5. Now we're gonna go back up to 6, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 61, 62. That was me going fast there. In that same throttle band, I'm not noticing any jumping. Again, this is a brand new unit. Brand new Mosters typically don't have too many issues, so take that for what it is. But there is definitely no jumpiness at that 5,500 RPM range, which is where I'm cruising right now. And I'm burning 22.3 liters an hour at this RPM setting, which is probably pretty close to maintaining. 2.4 seems more accurate than the previous 3.5 that I was burning. I must have been slowly climbing at that 3.5. Let me see if I can get my phone out, pull up Sky High HY, and just maintain altitude to the best of my ability to get that as accurate as possible fuel burn. All right, so we've got the Fly Sky HY here. We are losing 1 foot per minute. Let's add a little throttle. 1 meter per second. Now there we go. We're about maintaining altitude at 5,800 RPMs, burning 2.8 liters an hour is what I'm showing here, maintaining the altitude. 2.6, 2.8, 2.6, 2.5, 2.6. That right there is very impressive when I'm going to put this phone away before I drop it. So that's a pretty impressive fuel burn. But that RPM, there's no jumpiness to it, which I'm a big fan of. Anyways, so that's a pretty impressive fuel burn right there. Pretty smooth power band, or I should say, very smooth in the sense that there's no jumpiness. The power to me doesn't feel any smoother or less smooth than before. It feels about the same, as in the vibration of the engine, which we already talked about. Now, the final thing that I will talk about before I talk about this beautiful little display unit is the slight increase in power. This is spinning a 140 prop. I believe it's spinning a Helix prop. If not, it's spinning a Vittorazi fast prop. There is a nice little increase in power, just like the babyest touch increase in power. Now, in addition to the slight increase in power, there's ever so slightly an increase in torque steer. As I've watched a bunch of these other paramotors take off, I've almost seen the torque overwhelm some of the paramotors with torque compensation that's not quite enough. I've watched a lot of twisting effect happen because of that. That is of no fault of the paramotors, nor the paramotor manufacturers, or the frames, I should say. It's just they're not building these to compensate for that slight increase in torque steer due to the slight increase in power. And so you get ever so slightly more of a bump in power. I would say it's like going from a 125 prop to a 130 prop. It's that just a little bit more bite, which is kind of nice. If we're splitting hairs and you only had to pick one thing for the rest of your life, yeah, I'd love to have that extra little power. It's like it's a little bit more of a bite. Now, I don't have too much time on a 140 factory R in the recent months, so I can't speak for that. But the in-the-butt feel tells me that it's not quite as much as a factory R spinning a 140 prop. That's all my opinion based off what I felt. That could be totally false. That could be a complete exaggeration. That is all just what I have felt sitting in this seat. So take that for what it is. The little increase in power is, from what I understand, as they told me, is the butterfly valve that opens and closes inside the carburetor, allowing fuel in and fuel out, or closing fuel out, is not there because it's a electronic fuel injection motor. So that small increase in power comes from that no longer being there. That could be false, but I asked a Vittorazi mechanic, and that was the understanding that I got from him. There could be a lost in translation moment, but that's what I got from them, is that slight increase in power comes from that butterfly valve not being there. Now, let's talk about this little display unit, because I think of all things, this is kind of my favorite. I like data. Data is cool. One of the joys of paramotoring is that there isn't data. There isn't a dashboard sitting in front of you telling you information. It's a very free-feeling thing. But a dashboard is also cool. So with this little dashboard, it's telling me my RPMs right there. It's telling me my battery percentage. It's telling me my fuel burn per liters. And it's telling me a bunch of other things, like how long I can fly at this current fuel burn, and my temperature, and all of those fun things. The most important things to point out are the liter per hour fuel burn and the RPMs. That's really nice. You can put an RPM tag on your throttle and get that information, but a liter per hour fuel burn, that one's very hard to calculate. And this does that beautifully. That's probably my favorite part about this little display unit, is it gives you that piece of information. Now, what that information means is that now I can better know how far I can go. I can better know where I can go to and not go to, if I'm going to make it back to the LZ or if I should land elsewhere, how far I can go, all of those things. It gives me that additional piece of information that allows me to do a flight that maybe I wouldn't otherwise. It kind of removes that, you could say, range anxiety that people can have because of lack of information. If you don't know how much fuel you have, you don't know how much you're burning, it's hard to know how far you can go. Now, you can work around that by knowing how much you took off and your average fuel burn per hour, and kind of calculate it. But this is exact, this is precise, and this is in the moment. If I add throttle, my liters per hour is now 10.7. If I dump throttle, it is now 0.6. That's pretty snazzy. It gives me the information. Gives direct information in the moment. Now, the reason that is additionally nice is because, let's say you go up and you do a crank, bank, spank kind of flight, as I call it, which is basically a rip around, have a good time flight. You're going to burn more fuel on one of those flights than a flight like I'm having here, where I'm just flat and level cruising. This flight is going to burn less fuel than a yank, crank, spank flight would burn. So when I go do a yank, crank, bank flight, I might not know what my fuel burn is, because I'm going off of a cruising flight, not a rip-it flight, as we could also call it. This gives me the ability to know based off what I'm doing right there in the moment, which is super cool, and I enjoy knowing that information. So that's kind of my first thoughts here on the EFI by Vittorazi, the Moser 185 EFI. I might add some things after this. If you see me talking, that's me adding things. If you don't see me talking, then I didn't have anything to add. Just take this for what it is. This is only my opinion. Look for Vittorazi's official posts for exact info on deliveries and stuff like that. Thank you guys for watching. My name is Trevor Steele, and we will see you guys in the next video.